220 is usually bigger stuff, and usually, I'm not going to say always, but usually does not have a light switch associated with it, any sort of switch. So it's usually like wired and powered all the time. Most common examples in a house would be oven. That's usually going to be like a 50 amp. Your air conditioner, both the heat pump and the air handler itself are going to have two separate circuits that are 220, and your hot water heater. Those are probably the most common things. Usually hot water heater, depending, again, it's all going to depend on the size you buy, but usually like a number 10 wire, which would be 30 amp, 220. And then, like I say, your stove would be 50 amp usually, but you guys need to look that up based on what you're doing. In here, everything I have, this 220 is going to be 30 amp, except for my incoming power, which is going to be 50 amp and 100 amp, depending on if I'm hooked up. I'm putting a 100 amp service in here, so if we do park this in a permanent location where we have power from the power company, we can run 100 amp to it. Then I can run 2 or 3 espresso machines if I need to. If we're using our generator, then I'm only going to have 50. So I'm going to have one breaker coming in here that's 50 amp from my generator, and I'll have another one that's 100 amp that would come in from the power company. So basically you use either of those for incoming power. Then your outgoing is all this other stuff, but the biggest I'm going to have in here is 30 amp, which is going to be to my espresso machines and my hot water heater. I'm not even sure on my hot water heater yet. They actually make small hot water heaters that go with 110, so we'll establish that when I'm installing the hot water heater. But right now I'm going to show you how to install a 220 breaker. So, or a rough-in a 220 circuit. It's no different than everything else. The only difference is we're going to use different wire. So this time, instead of it getting easier because it's thinner, it's going to get harder because it's thicker. My simplest and closest 220 circuit is going to go to that box over there. Well, shoot, she already ran it. So basically, I'm not going to run it because it's already been done. But you see the E here, that's where my espresso goes. You can tell by looking at that wire once again, and I'll show you up there at the box that it's bigger. So basically, the other thing about 220 that's very uncommon is that it goes to more than one place. If I'm putting in a 30 amp 220 circuit, it's probably because I'm supplying something that needs that much power. And it needs it all the time. So it needs that much power all the time. Like regular typical 110 outlets through a house, sometimes you're running a vacuum, sometimes you're running a TV, sometimes you're running a computer. None of those things take anywhere near the amount of power that circuit can pull. So you put in multiple locations and you can run all that stuff at once. But this espresso machine calls for 30 amps at 220. So I'm putting in a 30 amp wire at 220, and it's all it's going to run is that espresso machine. So usually, I just don't want you to think, well, I want a 220 plug for an espresso machine here. Well, I got power here. I'm just going to run another one right over here for this one, because now I got a circuit that requires 60 amps, and I've only ran 30. So you don't do that. So you just run 130 to this one and 130 to the other one, and you do each one of them back with their own independent breaker. That's really unique about 220. When they got this one wired, it's going back to our breaker box. It's that wire that's just hanging there right now. So now we're gonna go ahead and terminate it on this end. It's no different, when the rough-in phase is no different at all. The only difference is like I say, I'm only going to one box, and I'm using a bigger wire, and I'm gonna go put it in the box the same way over here as I did the rest of them, and rough-in is done. It's definitely different on how I'll wire it up after, for my final finish. So, but for right now, it's not that different. If you compare this to this, now this is a big comparison. Same basic wire, but you can see a big difference in size. And as I grab it and I'm moving it, I can tell, again, it's a big difference. This is a number 14, this is a number 10, much bigger wire, just a little harder to deal with. I think I probably put it about right here. Now, I'm gonna have to adjust my cutter again. This way, it's obvious because I won't even probably be able to get it on here. So I have to loosen it now. because I'm going to a bigger wire. And once I got it in there and it can do that, same thing, I just squeeze, crank, and but again, you can see, so I compared, here's my 12, and here's my 14. So you can see these in a group, and then here's my 10. So you can see there's 3 different size wires. Okay, this is a little bigger, so this is gonna press a little harder, but it's the same fitting, same red end. Just push a little harder. That's now connected and in there. Take this and I'm gonna run this one on this side. Again, it's no different. And now we've ran a 220 circuit for roughing. That's it. So rather than making y'all watch that again and again and again, I'm just gonna tell you we're gonna do this to the whole trailer. And then when we're done, we'll seal this up and we'll sheet around it. I had to get creative here. Usually this wouldn't be sticking out of the wall like this. I'm planning to have a little step out in my wall here on both sides, partially because I'm gonna have access panels coming out the rear of the trailer where we can come in with our water and our electricity, and partially because I was gonna put these up front, so I didn't try to make these the proper width for my box. I'm fine with all this. It gives me more room. As you can see, things get really busy right in here. Every wire coming into this whole trailer is coming right back to here. So again, I could have probably done this in Romex. I'm not being inspected by anybody, but I feel better about this. It's, as it twists and does all the stuff that it's gonna do as a trailer, I think this is better. It's more expensive. I'm not showing you that. If you're looking for the cheap way to do stuff, you probably shouldn't be getting advice from me. If you're looking for what I consider to be the best, then that's what you're getting.